Welcome to Ancient Forbidden Knowledge. I'm your host, Ben Carter, and in today's episode we confront one of the greatest enigmas in human history, the staggering complexity of the Egyptian pyramids. Monuments that defy time, precision that outpaces modern tools, and a story that may be far older than we've been told. Beneath their weathered stones lies a possibility both thrilling and terrifying. That the builders of these ancient structures wielded a technology lost to us, one we cannot explain, replicate, or even fully detect. If true, what else might have been buried with it? The sands of the Giza Plateau stretch endlessly under the Egyptian sun, shimmering with heat and time. But more than just a backdrop to tourism and textbooks, this place once the nucleus of an ancient empire whose knowledge we only pretend to understand. Around 2500 BCE, according to mainstream archaeology, Pharaoh Khufu ordered the construction of the Great Pyramid, known as the Pyramid of Khufu or Cheops. This narrative suggests a civilization using copper tools, sleds, and manpower to drag massive limestone and granite blocks into place. But even as the textbooks repeat this tale, the physical evidence whispers another. At the time of the pyramid's construction, Egypt was ruled by a divine kingship, a pharaonic cult obsessed with the afterlife and cosmic balance. But power in this land wasn't merely political, it was spiritual, celestial, and mathematical. The stars were gods, the Nile a sacred vein of eternity. Temples aligned to solstices, and architecture was a language encoded with meaning. The priests held immense influence, functioning not just as intermediaries to the gods, but as keepers of knowledge, geometry, astronomy, healing, and perhaps something more. The scale of ambition in the Fourth Dynasty was unlike anything before it. The Great Pyramid alone contains an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 80 tons. Its base spans over 13 acres and aligns almost perfectly to true north, within a fraction of a degree, something modern engineers struggle to replicate without satellite assistance. This wasn't simply a tomb. No hieroglyphs decorate the interior walls. No mummy has ever been found inside. There is no definitive evidence that Khufu was ever buried there at all. Contemporary Egyptologists point to ramps and ropes, theorizing a colossal workforce moving blocks by sheer will. Yet no ramps have ever been discovered, not even remnants, and some of the stone, like the pink granite in the king's chamber, originates from Aswan, nearly 500 miles away. Transporting 70-ton stones across such distances without steel or wheels raises more than logistical doubts. It forces a re-evaluation of the entire civilization's capabilities. Ancient texts reference a mysterious force known as Heka, loosely translated as magic, but more accurately described as a form of energy mastery, a science of vibration, frequency, and harmony that bridged the material and the metaphysical. Was this poetic metaphor or memory? Some inscriptions and later Greco-Roman accounts describe priests manipulating objects with sound or levitating through chants. Absurd as it may sound to modern ears, acoustic levitation has been demonstrated in laboratory settings today. On a small scale, sound waves can suspend objects in air. If such principles were once magnified by technologies we no longer possess, the implications are seismic. The surrounding structures at Giza deepen the mystery. The Sphinx, its head disproportionately small for its body, appears to have been recarved, perhaps repurposed from an even earlier monument. Its weathering pattern, argued by some geologists, indicates rainfall erosion, not desert winds, suggesting it could be thousands of years older than the pyramids themselves. If true, the Sphinx points to a forgotten epoch predating dynastic Egypt, a time when a civilization possessed knowledge not only of engineering but of the stars and Earth's energies. Within this sacred desert zone, myth and science collide. Ancient Egypt did not see a divide between technology and spirituality. Both were branches of the same tree. The gods were not distant deities, but cosmic forces that could be harnessed and integrated into daily life. Buildings were not structures, they were machines. And in the case of the Great Pyramid, perhaps a machine for energy, or memory, or something else entirely. In 1924, British Egyptologist Sir William Flinders Petrie made a curious observation that would quietly unsettle decades of established archaeological assumptions. Among the ruins at Giza, He encountered drill holes in granite blocks, spiral grooves cut into one of the hardest stones on Earth. The precision was baffling. These grooves were consistent, deep, and smoothly cut, resembling work performed by advanced rotary tools, not primitive copper chisels. The grooves suggested that the bit had not merely drilled the stone but penetrated with a force and efficiency unmatched by any tool known from that era. This was not an isolated anomaly. Engineers and stonemasons, those trained in modern cutting techniques, have visited Egypt and emerged mystified. The granite in the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid exhibits perfectly flat surfaces and right angles that even today would require laser-guided saws or computer-controlled machinery. Christopher Dunn, an engineer with decades of experience in aerospace manufacturing, examined the interior and concluded that it showed signs of precision machining, evidence of advanced fabrication beyond what copper tools and manual labor could achieve. One artifact in particular captures this enigma. Known as the schist disc or Saqqara disc, it was discovered in the tomb of Prince Sabu and dates back to the First Dynasty, around 3000 BCE. Made of a fragile stone called metasilt stone, the disc resembles a modern flywheel or mechanical rotor. It is symmetrical, with three-lobed wings that curve gracefully toward a central hub. No known tool of the time could have carved such delicate shapes in such brittle material without shattering it. Its function remains unknown, but its design hints at aerodynamics, rotation, and perhaps energy transmission, concepts supposedly foreign to its era. Equally unsettling are the massive basalt floor stones south of the Great Pyramid, each one weighing several tons, fit together with near-zero gaps. No mortar, no adhesives, just an interlocking system so precise that even modern survey equipment struggles to detect variance. These were not stones dumped into place. They were positioned with intention, as though part of a vast mechanism. When you stand among them, you don't feel like you're in a ruin. You feel like you're inside something that was built to function. What threatens orthodoxy is not just the existence of these anomalies, but the silence that follows their discovery. Academic institutions and mainstream Egyptologists routinely downplay or ignore such artifacts. They're catalogued but rarely discussed. When questions are asked, answers are vague. Ritual purposes, symbolic meaning, artistic experimentation. Yet none of these interpretations satisfy the engineering puzzle these objects present. The same fate met a remarkable structure known as the Osirion, located at Abydos. Buried deep beneath ground level, the Osirion is made of colossal granite blocks, many weighing over 100 tons. Unlike the surrounding temples, which are built from smaller stones and covered in hieroglyphs, the Osirion is stark, clean, and unfathomably precise. Its construction appears older, far older, than the temples built atop and around it. Yet it is officially classified as part of the same era, simply because there is no approved framework for anything earlier. This despite the fact that its design resembles megalithic architecture found in South America and Asia, not typical Egyptian styles. Pieces of a hidden picture continue to surface. In 1954, beneath a sealed pit beside the Great Pyramid, archaeologists unearthed the Khufu ship, an enormous cedarwood boat disassembled into over 1,000 pieces, perfectly preserved for 4,600 years. Once reconstructed, it revealed not only complex joinery techniques, but aerodynamic curves so precise that naval architects today are stunned by its design. The ship could sail, steer, and cut through water with surprising efficiency. And yet it was buried, intact, but unusable. Not a funerary item, but possibly part of a larger forgotten system. These discoveries tell a story not of primitive ingenuity, but of lost sophistication, technological, mathematical, and perhaps energetic. A story erased not by time, but by choice. When subjected to the scrutiny of modern technology, the Great Pyramid reveals dimensions and alignments so precise, so deliberately mathematical, that coincidence becomes increasingly implausible. Its sides, though weathered by millennia, are nearly perfectly straight. Each base measures just over 230 meters, differing by no more than a few centimeters, and its alignment to true north deviates by just 3/60th of a degree. So exact that only recently developed laser-guided tools could hope to match it. But it is not just the physical measurements that baffle researchers, it is the numbers encoded within. The pyramid's height, when multiplied by a factor of 43,200, yields the polar radius of the Earth. Its perimeter, when multiplied by that same factor, matches the planet's equatorial circumference. This number, 43,200, is not arbitrary. It is a key ratio in precessional astronomy connected to the Earth's axial wobble and the so-called Great Year, a 25,920-year cycle known to ancient cultures across the globe. How could a Bronze Age civilization, with no telescopes or satellites, encode the Earth's dimensions into stone with such accuracy? These numerical harmonies continue. The internal angles of the pyramid align with mathematical constants, pi, phi, and the golden ratio. The descending passage points directly to the pole star of its era, Thuban, in the constellation Draco. Such alignments required astronomical knowledge and engineering finesse far beyond what is credited to 4th Dynasty Egypt. Yet the official narrative remains silent, brushing aside these consistencies as curious but meaningless. Satellite imagery adds another layer of mystery. Taken in infrared and radar wavelengths, scans have revealed anomalies beneath the Giza Plateau, rectilinear patterns and voids that suggest underground chambers, tunnels, or even foundations of structures that have long since vanished from the surface. In 2017, a massive void was detected inside the Great Pyramid using muon tomography, a particle imaging technique developed for nuclear reactors. The chamber, over 30 meters long, sits above the Grand Gallery. It was not carved out by erosion or collapse. It was built and remains unexplored. In parallel, remote sensing in other regions of Egypt has revealed long-forgotten settlements, roads, and possible ceremonial complexes buried under centuries of sand. Each new image teases the possibility of a civilization far more expansive and connected than traditionally believed. Yet access to many of these locations remains restricted, often under the authority of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, which decides which finds are excavated and which are left untouched. Accounts from early explorers support these suggestions of buried knowledge. In the 19th century, French engineer Auguste Mariette uncovered the Serapeum of Saqqara, an underground complex containing giant granite sarcophagi, each weighing over 70 tons, sealed in vaults beneath the desert. No inscriptions, no remains, just monolithic boxes carved with laser-like precision, their purpose still unknown. Some theorize these were not tombs at all, but containment vessels, perhaps for energy or resonance or some function no longer understood. In many of these discoveries, the pattern is the same. Evidence emerges. It challenges accepted chronology or capability. Then it disappears from the conversation. Academic journals reject the findings or ignore them. Museums store artifacts out of sight. Funding is cut. Careers are threatened. The message is clear. This knowledge does not belong in our narrative. The pieces don't fit the puzzle we've been told to solve. Yet the cracks in that puzzle are spreading. The more we measure, analyze, and scan, the more undeniable the anomalies become. Something extraordinary once happened on the Giza Plateau, something not confined to myth or imagination. Its remnants are still there, hidden not by time, but beneath the weight of a story rewritten to keep us blind. Across continents and centuries, echoes of the pyramid enigma appear in places where, according to conventional history, no connection should exist. Civilizations that supposedly never contacted one another, separated by oceans, language, and time, built structures with uncanny similarities. Vast stone monuments aligned to the stars, constructed with impossible precision, often using techniques that still puzzle modern engineers. These are not isolated cases. They form a global pattern, one that suggests either a forgotten common source of knowledge or a phenomenon far stranger. In Mesoamerica, the ancient city of Teotihuacan mirrors Giza in startling ways. Its main structures, the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, are aligned along a central avenue that scholars call the Avenue of the Dead. The Pyramid of the Sun shares nearly the same base dimensions as the Great Pyramid of Giza, and it too aligns with celestial bodies, marking solstices and equinoxes with remarkable accuracy. What's more, the city's layout appears to reflect the positions of the planets, just as the Giza pyramids align with Orion's belt. Yet Teotihuacan's builders left no written record of who they were or why they built such a city. Thousands of miles away in Cambodia, the temple complex of Angkor Wat aligns not just to celestial events, but mirrors the Draco constellation, a pattern that matches the alignment of the pyramids at Giza. Scholars insist this is coincidence. But coincidences of this magnitude, repeated with such frequency, become statistically improbable. In Bolivia, the megalithic site of Pumapunku defies explanation. At an altitude of nearly 13,000 feet, massive H-shaped stones carved with machine-like precision are scattered across the high plateau. The stones are made of andesite, a material incredibly difficult to work with, even using diamond tools today. The interlocking design of the blocks suggests prefabrication, almost as if they were molded, not carved. How these structures were created, and by whom, remains one of the greatest mysteries of South American archaeology. Then there is the forgotten city of Nan Madol in Micronesia, built atop a coral reef, with over 750,000 tons of basalt columns stacked into platforms and walls. The origin of the stone, the method of transport, and the purpose of the city are all unclear. Like Egypt's Giza, Nan Madol seems engineered with precision, created by a culture that vanished without trace, leaving behind only the evidence of a technology no longer understood. What ties these sites together is not just the engineering marvels or stellar alignments, it is the symbolic language embedded in their construction. Serpent imagery, depictions of cosmic trees, spiral motifs, and mythic stories of sky beings or civilizing gods recur across cultures. The Hopi speak of the ant people, who sheltered humanity underground during cataclysm. The Dogon of Mali described the Sirius star system with knowledge that predates telescopic astronomy. The Sumerians recorded beings from the stars, Anunnaki, who gifted humans with knowledge and structure. These myths, far from being primitive superstition, may be fragments of memory, cultural residue of an epoch that mainstream history refuses to acknowledge. An epoch when knowledge was shared across the globe, encoded in stone, ritual, and alignment. It raises questions that challenge the very foundations of history. Did a global civilization exist before the rise of the known empires? Was this knowledge passed down through survivors of a forgotten cataclysm? Or were these monuments messages, left behind by something other than human? The consistent recurrence of sacred geometry, astronomical alignment, and megalithic construction across so many ancient cultures cannot be dismissed as mere coincidence. It points to an intelligence, ancient, unified, and deliberate, that once spanned the earth. An intelligence that may have left behind far more than monuments. It may have left behind a blueprint hidden in plain sight. In the quiet halls of academia, where research is funded, careers are built, and narratives are carefully maintained, the anomalies surrounding the pyramids and similar megalithic sites are often relegated to the fringes, not because of a lack of evidence, but because of the threat they pose to established frameworks. When findings challenge the accepted chronology or technological limits of ancient civilizations, they are more likely to be ignored, dismissed, or ridiculed than investigated. This is not a failure of science, but of institutional self-preservation. Modern archaeology and Egyptology are built on foundations laid in the 19th and early 20th centuries, shaped by colonial narratives and Eurocentric assumptions. The idea that an ancient civilization could possess scientific knowledge rivaling or surpassing our own is considered not just implausible, it is taboo. Researchers who ask the wrong questions or propose unorthodox theories often find their careers stunted, their grants revoked, their reputations stained. The academic firewall is not enforced by evidence, but by gatekeeping. One example of this resistance is the case of Robert Schoch, a geologist who analysed the weathering on the Sphinx and proposed, based on erosion patterns, that it may be thousands of years older than conventionally believed. His findings were not countered with superior data. They were dismissed outright by Egyptologists who lacked geological training. The backlash was swift and severe. Despite support from other geologists and independent researchers, Schoch's work was largely sidelined in academic discourse. The same pattern holds for engineers like Christopher Dunn, whose analysis of precision-cut stones and machine-like tool marks in Egyptian monuments has been ignored by archaeologists unfamiliar with the tolerances and techniques he describes. Rather than engage with the substance of his findings, Critics label him a pseudoscientist, despite his decades of industrial experience. The implication is clear. If you deviate from the script, you are no longer welcome at the table. This bias is further amplified by the structures of academic publishing. Peer-reviewed journals are often controlled by tightly knit editorial boards that enforce consensus. Controversial papers are rejected not for lack of rigor, but because they pose a threat to the status quo. Research that questions the origins of civilization, the capabilities of ancient peoples, or the nature of lost knowledge is effectively censored, not through government intervention, but through cultural inertia. Behind this silence lies a deeper fear. If the pyramids are not simply tombs but technological artifacts, if ancient civilizations possessed advanced knowledge now lost, then the entire narrative of human progress must be rewritten. Our linear model of history, from primitive beginnings to modern enlightenment, begins to crumble. And with it, the foundations of power that depend on the belief that today's institutions represent the pinnacle of knowledge. Universities, museums, and funding bodies are not neutral. They are gatekeepers of memory. What they choose to study, display, or suppress shapes what we believe about ourselves. In this context, the academic firewall is not just intellectual, it is ideological. It defends not only the chronology of civilization, but the myth of progress that underpins our culture. And yet, cracks are beginning to appear. Independent researchers, citizen scientists, and open-source analysts are using tools once reserved for institutions, LiDAR, satellite imagery, 3D modeling, to challenge official narratives. As access to information democratizes, so too does the ability to question the story we've been told. The firewall is still standing, but its foundations are weakening. And beyond it lies a history far older and far more mysterious than we've ever been allowed to imagine. Once the veil of conventional history begins to thin, what emerges from behind it is not merely confusion, it's an entirely different framework of possibility. Fringe theories, often dismissed with a scoff, begin to resemble viable alternatives when weighed against the mounting anomalies. These are not idle fantasies, but structured models built on data, geometry, myth, and pattern recognition. They offer interpretations of the pyramids not as tombs, but as devices, machines with purposes we no longer comprehend. One of the most compelling theories comes from engineer Christopher Dunn, who proposed that the Great Pyramid functioned as a power plant. According to his model, the internal layout, the Grand Gallery, the Queen's Chamber, the King's Chamber, and the so-called shafts, was not architectural happenstance, but part of a sophisticated system designed to resonate and generate energy. The pyramid's core structure, composed of different materials with varying acoustic properties, could have served as a harmonic resonance chamber. The shafts may have played a role in regulating frequency, while subterranean passages acted as grounding mechanisms. If accurate, this turns the Great Pyramid from a static monument into a dynamic, functional technology. Other fringe interpretations focus on the possibility of the pyramids being part of a global energy grid. This theory suggests that megalithic sites around the world were placed intentionally on telluric currents, natural electromagnetic pathways coursing through the Earth. The idea posits that ancient civilizations tapped into these currents, using the pyramids and other stone structures as nodes or amplifiers of planetary energy. The locations of Giza, Teotihuacan, Stonehenge, and many others align with geometric precision along what some researchers call the Earth grid or ley lines. These placements, proponents argue, are not accidental. They were part of a networked system that channeled natural forces for unknown, perhaps even spiritual or technological purposes. Another theory steps even further beyond the material world and into the quantum. Some believe the pyramids acted as consciousness amplifiers, structures designed not just to manipulate energy, but awareness itself. These ideas draw from ancient esoteric traditions, as well as modern quantum physics and studies in non-local consciousness. According to this line of thought, the geometry and materials of the pyramids may have created a resonant space where the human mind could access altered states, higher dimensions, or direct communication with cosmic intelligences. The pyramid, in this view, was both temple and transmitter. Among the most controversial ideas is the suggestion that these structures were inherited, built not by the dynasties we credit, but by a civilization long since vanished. This hypothetical culture, sometimes called Atlantis, Tartaria, or the first civilization, is said to have flourished in a prehistoric golden age, wiped out by global cataclysm. Survivors, possessing fragments of their ancestors' knowledge, may have attempted to rebuild or preserve what remained. This could explain why advanced techniques appear suddenly in ancient Egypt, with no developmental arc leading to them. The knowledge wasn't invented, it was remembered. Skeptics argue that such theories are rooted in fantasy, yet many of these so-called fringe researchers are trained scientists, engineers, and historians who found too many cracks in the mainstream model to stay silent. Their work does not replace traditional archaeology, it complements it, expands it, and dares to follow evidence where institutions won't. The question becomes not whether these theories are too strange, but whether the conventional story has become too small to contain the truth. In a world where the impossible is constantly being redefined by discovery, perhaps it is not the theories that are fringe, but our understanding. When anomalies outnumber explanations, when structures defy our tools, and when ancient texts speak of knowledge we still can't replicate, we are left with one unsettling possibility. What we call myth may have once been fact, and what we dismiss as fringe may be the last echo of a truth deliberately buried. If these structures are more than tombs, if they are remnants of an advanced technological or metaphysical system, then one must ask, who would want this truth hidden? And more importantly, who benefits from the lie? The erasure of forbidden knowledge is rarely accidental. It is the result of deliberate choices made across centuries by institutions and individuals whose power depends on controlling the story of human origins. From the earliest empires to the modern state, history has always been a tool of control. When a civilization rewrites its past, it also reshapes the limits of what its people believe is possible. If humanity is seen as having risen from primitive ignorance, guided only by kings, clergy, or scientists, then authority remains centralized. But if humanity once wielded knowledge far beyond what we're taught, if ancient people had access to energy systems, consciousness tools, or cosmic understanding, then modern hierarchies begin to unravel. The myth of progress, of linear evolution, breaks apart. Religious authorities were among the first to impose a strict narrative. As early Christianity gained dominance in Europe, rival worldviews were condemned. Ancient schools of knowledge, like the Library of Alexandria, were destroyed. The texts that hinted at older wisdom, alternative cosmologies, or pre-flood civilizations were declared heretical or mythological. The Bible was canonized, and with it, a tightly edited version of the past. Stories like the Tower of Babel or the Great Flood may have encoded fragments of real events, but only under the framework deemed acceptable by the Church. Secret societies emerged, claiming to preserve this lost knowledge. Groups like the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn reference the mysteries of Egypt, the power of sacred geometry, and the significance of symbols buried deep within the architecture of the ancients. While mainstream historians regard them as symbolic or philosophical movements, their secrecy and rituals suggest something else. A covert transmission of knowledge, protected from institutions that would destroy it. In modern times, the suppression continues, more sanitized, but no less effective. Academic institutions control historical discourse. Governments restrict access to sites, artifacts, and classified discoveries. Museums curate narratives, displaying what aligns with consensus and storing the rest in archives and vaults. Funding agencies ensure that only approved interpretations receive public attention. Those who question the paradigm are marginalized regardless of their credentials. The media, too, plays its part. Coverage of new discoveries often ends with a reassurance. Nothing here challenges what we already know. When LiDAR scans in Guatemala revealed tens of thousands of hidden structures from the Maya civilization, headlines marveled at the size, but avoided implications about our understanding of ancient complexity. When genetic studies hint at unexplained migration patterns or unknown ancestry in prehistoric populations, they are framed as curiosities, not contradictions. Even the language used in historical discussion reveals the bias. Advanced ancient structures are labelled mysteries, their builders primitive. Precision is called accidental, alignment is called coincidence, and anything unexplainable is dismissed as ritual. These terms are not neutral, they're tools to contain what can't be easily absorbed into the official model. So who benefits? Those who rule by maintaining ignorance. Those who profit from a vision of humanity as weak, scattered, and always in need of guidance. If the masses understood that their ancestors may have once unlocked the secrets of energy, consciousness, and the cosmos, it would ignite a cultural transformation. Power would decentralize. Institutions would lose their monopoly on truth. Rewriting history is not about correcting the record. It's about shaping the future. The suppression of ancient knowledge is not just about hiding the past. It's about limiting what we believe is possible in the present. Because a people who remember what they once were are no longer easy to control. If the evidence suggests that the Great Pyramid and structures like it are the remnants of an advanced technological system, then the implications ripple far beyond archaeology. They touch the core of who we are, where we came from, and what we are truly capable of. It forces a re-evaluation not just of history, but of human potential itself. Because if this knowledge once existed, if it was real, operational, and widely understood, then its loss is not merely a historical footnote. It is a civilizational trauma, and its recovery could alter everything. Imagine a world where the purpose of architecture was not just shelter or monument, but harmony with Earth's energetic systems. A world where structures enhanced consciousness, transmitted energy, and encoded astronomical data in stone. This knowledge, if reclaimed, could revolutionize energy production, medicine, agriculture, and even human psychology. We've been taught to separate science from spirit, structure from meaning. But what if our ancestors didn't? What if they understood that the material and the metaphysical are two sides of the same truth? Such a world would not be defined by fossil fuels or digital dependency, but by resonance, frequency, and geometry. Illness might be treated through vibration, not chemicals. Communication could be enhanced through consciousness, not hardware. Energy might be drawn not from extraction, but from harmonic interaction with the planet itself. These are not distant dreams. They are possibilities once glimpsed by pioneers like Nikola Tesla, who hinted at a form of wireless energy derived from the Earth's natural frequencies. He was silenced, his work confiscated, his vision buried. Reclaiming ancient knowledge would not mean reverting to the past. It would mean recovering what was lost, what was stolen, and integrating it into a new paradigm. It would mean understanding that history is not a slow ascent from ignorance to progress, but a cycle of rise, fall, and rediscovery. That perhaps we are not the peak of human development, but the survivors of a long-forgotten fall. It also raises a more disquieting question. What caused the loss in the first place? If a civilization once existed that could build the pyramids with such skill, what destroyed it? Was it war, environmental collapse, cosmic disaster? Ancient myths from nearly every culture speak of a great cataclysm, floods, fire, stars falling from the sky. These stories may not be allegory, they may be memory, and the structures that remain, those that stand the test of time, may have been built not just for function or faith, but as messages, warnings, clues left for those who came after. And if we ignore them, if we continue to dismiss their significance, then we risk repeating a cycle we don't even know we're in. Because knowledge does not disappear on its own, it is erased, buried, and overwritten. And each time we rebuild on the ashes of forgotten wisdom, we are building on fractured foundations. To accept that the Great Pyramid may be part of a larger forgotten science is to accept that our species has amnesia. That we are not the first to reach for the stars, to manipulate energy, or to wonder about the nature of consciousness. It's to admit that our future may be locked in our past, that by recovering the truth we are not just rewriting history, we are reclaiming destiny. Because if the ancients knew how to harness the earth, align with the cosmos, and expand the mind, then perhaps so can we. The stones still stand, their silence louder than any inscription. The Great Pyramid, stripped of its casing stones, weathered by millennia yet unyielding, continues to cast its long shadow, not just over the desert, but over the story of civilization itself. It was not built for glory, nor merely for the dead. It was engineered with purpose, precision, and permanence. And in that permanence lies a haunting truth. We have forgotten who we were. No official record explains its construction. No text found within tells us why it was built. And yet the structure speaks. Through its impossible alignments, its encoded mathematics, its unfathomable engineering, it whispers of a time when knowledge was not fragmented but whole. When science and spirituality were not enemies but reflections. When human beings were not cogs in an industrial machine but stewards of a greater mystery. We were never meant to forget. But somewhere along the line we did. We allowed the burning of libraries, the closing of minds, the standardization of truth. We accepted textbooks in place of inquiry. We allowed our understanding of history to be reduced to a timeline, sanitized and linear. We forgot that civilizations rise and fall, not just through conquest or collapse, but through amnesia. What stands at Giza is not a monument to death, but to memory. A memory encoded in stone, designed to outlast flood, fire, war, and forgetfulness. The deeper one looks into its geometry, its placement, its materials, the more the illusion of primitive Egypt begins to dissolve. In its place emerges something older, something deliberate. Not myth, not fantasy, but the remnants of a civilization that knew things we do not. Perhaps things we are only now beginning to rediscover. If we continue to ignore what is plainly visible, if we continue to explain away anomalies, suppress questions, and mock those who dare to ask, then we will bury not just the past, but the future. Because the Great Pyramid is not alone. Its fingerprints are found in Peru, in Mexico, in India, in Cambodia. Across continents and oceans, the same motifs repeat, the same alignments, the same knowledge, the same deliberate silence. This is not coincidence, this is legacy, and legacies do not disappear. They wait, they endure, and when the time is right, they speak again. Thanks for listening. This has been Ancient Forbidden Knowledge. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.